Hello, it's Matt O'Leary, and this is the top, my personal top, the top 15 albums of 2018. You know when people say, for me personally, like, if it's for you, it's personal? 2018, I don't think it needs to be said, was another fantastic year for music. It seems like every year for the past 5 to 10 have just been topped every single time. And maybe the reason for that is just how densely saturated the market is. There's so much music out there. There's so many convenient tools at people's fingertips, not only for making and creating music, but for sharing it as well. So all that creative potential that was there sort of in hibernation before, in 2018, it's able to be expressed. It's out there. And what struck me most about this year was just how different, just how diverse all these top album lists are. You look at even major publications and it seems like there's no agreement, there's no consensus about even the top 5, the top 10 albums. For instance, me and a friend who share some similar music tastes for sure, grew up listening to a lot of the same stuff. We even share music throughout the year. In our top 10 albums, there's not even one shared album. So before we get to my cream of the crop top 15, let's get to some honorable mentions. First off is the Japanese math rock band I love a lot called Mouse on the Keys with their album Trace. And if you're looking for some piano-led, piano-centric math rock or jazz rock, then look no further. Next up is an electronic album by ARP or ARP called Zebra. This one has a lot of mallet instruments. It's got that very Balearic style, that relaxed style, similar to Mark Barrett and his Sketches on an Island albums that I've covered before on the channel. It's a style I just have come to love a lot. And then finally, for a little mention here, is the band Lectures with their self-titled album. This is a 4-piece rock band from the UK. If you want your little dose of Radiohead for the year, then this is definitely it. I think I lied. I got 2 more albums to mention. These are 2 that I really wanted to get to. I love these artists, but I just did not give enough attention to these albums throughout the year. The first one's by Julia Holter called Aviary. A lot harder to get into, I think, than her last album. A lot less immediate. And then the other would be Hopalong's new album. English art rock band Django come in at number 15, and they were always just a cut below Yeasayer for me when it comes to that psychedelic, globally informed, kind of scrapbooking method of making music, but they definitely gave them a run for their money with this new album Marble Skies, which was a January release from last year. This album wastes no time with intellectual pursuits. It's just a straightforward pop record with concise songs and the immediacy of pet sounds. And you're going to get a treasure trove of styles, from the Latin pop of Surface to Air to the more punky, almost square danceable Tic-Tac-Toe, the rockabilly of Further, the perfect club banger of In Your Beat, but it's all presented in this very cheeky way that only Englishmen could pull off. It's bookended by the 2 catchiest tracks, and it's just an airtight listen from start to finish. That all the bizarre experiments in it really work just because of the songwriting quality. Icelandic musical genius Olafur Arnalds falls at number 14 with his 4th proper LP called Remember, which has a colon in it. Clever, clever. This guy's musical genius knows no bounds. The guy's drummed in a metal band called Fighting Shit. He's also composed ballet scores, so, you know, both extremes, check. Remember incorporates this really cool technology called Stratus, which allows notes on one piano to generate harmonies on 2 additional supplementary pianos. I think that Arnold's had a hand in developing this technology, which was installed as an art piece in Reykjavik just months before its use on recording this album. But he's not just going for virtuosic muscle on this thing. There are a lot of very, very strong themes on this album, but all of them are played with the utmost delicacy. There's just an emotional weight to this thing that far surpasses any electronic or ambient albums I've heard in recent memory. There are some icy moments on this thing with some aching, minimalist strings that sound very classically Icelandic. But when he comes back with that piano, it's like you're gathered around the hearth again with a warm drink. I even really enjoy the drum machines on the album, which never really take you out of the serenity of the music. It just works works on every level. It's dainty, it's intricate in a way that only a composer with this much swagger, this much competence, this much confidence could pull off. Members of the band Shearwater and Cross Record, Cross Paths for number 13. It's a debut album called Loma by Loma. This album sounds like a warhorse walking straight into the devastating desert wind. It's got that restrained ferocity on tracks like the ominous White Glass or the album Highlight Joy, while the song Sundogs gives us the calm in the storm, leading with this campfire acoustic strum and featuring Emily Cross's fantastically controlled alto voice. Throughout the album, you really hear the environment that surrounded them as they recorded this album in a Texas farmhouse. Intentional or not, there are some squeaking doors and creaky wood sounds and even some barking dogs. And just this tremendous sense of aridness, of dustiness, of wide open spaces. Rockstar, they missed it with this album. It could have been a perfect soundtrack for Red Dead 2. At number 12 is the Ontario-based, bold and brash alt-country singer-songwriter Daniel Romano, Finally Free. This album is a little bit more reflective, a little more insular than Modern Pressure, displaying some of his most heady lyrics. Like the songs There's Beauty in the Vibrant Form or Between the Blades of Grass, which don't really need to be about anything. They're just really tantalizing in their specificity and their just peculiarity. The album cascades from idea to idea with this alacrity, with this eagerness, and it has some of that Eastern sort of mystical stuff, but it never gets monotonous, it never gets drony. My favorite songs are the sweet ones, the most pastoral. The folk epic Have You Arrival, or the haunting opener Empty Husk. Or Long Mirror of Time, which is more Bob Dylan than Dylan himself. The best part of Finally Free was all recorded on a 4-track cassette player. Really. Numero Once is a truly relaxing, a truly gentle album. It's Ben Howard's 4th album and first in 4 years, called Noonday Dream. Ben's known for some strange guitar picking styles, like when he lays the guitar flat along his thighs. He doesn't ever really show off the guitar dexterity that he has as a player. He really opts instead for these ambient soundscapes that draw more attention to these first-person contemplations and longings. And these songs have a real intensity, a real charisma that really draws the attention in. Kind of like when a guest speaker just sort of whispers in the mic and everyone has to lean in real close. This album continues to be an enigma for me, like something that draws your attention in but doesn't necessarily reveal itself fully, like a silhouette behind a curtain. And I find myself coming back to it again and again, even though I don't really know what it all means. I love the new direction that Kero Bonito took this year, away from the cheery J-pop into this dirtier, this crunchier guitar style. And at number 10 is Kero Bonito's album Time and Place, which showcases their innate melodic superpowers, but with a much more intriguing, much darker instrumental palette. With how short and compact the songs are, you'll go just in seconds from this squelching, grating, just electronic part into this massive sing-along infectious chorus. They're just holding this juxtaposition out in front of you. Like, would you just look at it? The highlights for me are the Brian Wilson infused Dear Future Self and the jaunty single Make Believe, which features a vocalist from another band I really love called Crying. A third UK act in a row comes in at number 9. It's the jazz and electronic band GoGo Penguin with their 4th album, Humdrum Star. Oh my goodness, is this a sleek album? You've got these majestic piano melodies and rapid fire drum beats firing at you from all different directions. A top-notch instrumental album, just super cool stuff. At number 8 is the triumphant return from the progressive jazz rock band the Reina Kindo with Happy However After. This is a unique one for me because this band has no other band has had as great of an influence on my musical taste as the Reina Kindo. I said this in my review earlier this year of this album. And their first album, Rhythm, Chord, and Melody, is right up there with any of my favorite music ever. So needless to say, this one, it means a lot to me, and this band is just so criminally underrated and underappreciated. It's insane. They went on the crowdfunding route for this one, releasing a song a month for their Patreon subscribers, which is me. And I reviewed this one before, so you can check that out for more thoughts, but I still feel like it's a little bit of a disjointed experience. And some of the cornier vocals and lyrics from Joey Secarioli do pop up on some tracks like Smell of a Rose or Colder Than December or Return to Me. But there's still some master musicians who, in my book, still can't really do anything wrong. For the 100th time, please, dear God, baby Jesus, please, 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 God, please listen to this band. Number 7 is another album I reviewed in the year and a late release in 2018. It's Double Coda by the Glands. This is a posthumous release after the death of their frontman Ross Shapiro. The Glands is a late 90s alternative rock band, and a bit of a cheat for me, but these songs haven't seen the light of day until this year, so you know what, 2018, here it is. Just think how many songs, how many albums are rolled into a ball and then just thrown in the trash. We need more excavators, we need more archaeologists in music, just digging up the old bones of long-lost geniuses. This one plays out like the Beatles' White Album, with tons of short tracks and disparate ideas cobbled together. Check out my review for more info. Number 6, I love number 6. It's a music listener's dream find. It's the Dutch electronic producer Lucinate with Big Noise. Big Noise is a sample-heavy jazz and electronic album with some tasteful textures and a really unique and exciting mashup of the acoustic and digital worlds. I love this album, but one time my wife said it sounded like bougie mall music. Come on. Unknown Mortal Orchestra once again hits the top 5, with Ruben Nielsen just keeping up the pace with Sex and Food. These angular, jazzy progressions really make this band what they are. They've come up with the most unique mix of soul and psych, and a sound that's just totally their own. I've never heard a band that calls on so many references from pop music history, but still sounds like a big slimy blue alien. You read the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy? Just think of the creatures from Malacandra. That's exactly who wrote this album. Long live UMO, the best psych pop band of the decade. Woof! Woof! Jen Wasner's Baltimore band is at number 4. It's Wye Oak with The Louder It Run. Wait, the louder I call, the faster it runs. There we go. This band will always be overshadowed somewhat by their Baltimore dream pop contemporaries Beach House, but I much prefer them. And Wasner's voice has the quiet strength of a sheathed sword, of a sleeping beast. And the narrative and the lyrics on this thing tap into some incredibly nuanced ideas. Like the question of whether to trust your own subjective swings of emotion on you of all people. You know, that desiring of something more eternal and solid to rest on rather than just personal whims. And that's a recurring theme throughout, that incessant need to tug and grab onto an anchor in the midst of such an absurd and chaotic world. But there's never a conclusion about what absolute truth is or a certain direction to go in. And you know, gray areas aren't very sexy. You know, it's hard to do that. It takes some intelligence to grasp and to own that sort of agnosticism, I guess. If you don't believe in God or you don't believe in a natural moral law, you know, you tend to grasp onto these dangerous ideologies instead. But this album does not do that. And they probably do suffer commercially because of that, because they're not appealing to any certain ideological group, but that's the most honest approach. Oh, and the music on this thing, it kind of falls between the upbeat synth pop of 2014's album Shriek with the much heavier guitar style on an even earlier album, Civilian. 9 out of 10. Highly recommend. Top 3. Here we go. Number 3 is Dinosaur with Wonder Trail. Not Dinosaur Jr., just no. Dinosaur is instead a jazz project led by trumpetist Laura Jerd. Minimalist electronics undergird just the jazz onslaught, with every instrument taking turns and nailing it every time. Earlier in the year I compared this one to some late 60s Miles Davis. It definitely has that sort of energy of an album like In a Silent Way, while of course incorporating more modern electronic sounds and heavy hip-hop and funk beats. Don't expect a snoozy, smooth jazz record. It's definitely brash at times, and it just continues to be a mesmerizing listen for me. Number 2 is an explosively impressive record that came out of nowhere this year. It's Lack the Low with One Eye Closed. Australian Cat Hunter is behind this terrorizing cataclysm, this wrecking ball of a record that can inadequately be described as experimental or avant-pop. We've got a full brass section which functions in the same way that it would on a Joanna Newsom record. And Cat plays piano, organ, guitar, violin, cello, banjo, alto sax. She sings, she puts some electronics in there. The first half is definitely a little bit more listenable, a little bit more accessible, with Cat's ridiculous acrobatic vocals and floating tone really taking center stage. Then we get a couple transitional instrumental tracks like The Daylight Is All Inside and Dream of Running Every Night. And the second half gets real weird. The drummer seems like he is in his own little world. And the chord sequences sound like they were chosen by a blindfolded dart thrower. To say the least, this thing is challenging. But the magic of this record really doesn't need to be explained, so for this one I'm just gonna hand it over and you'll see. My number 1 album of 2018, was it any surprise? The Lemon Twigs Go to School! After the first album, which I gave a 9 out of 10, I think, I was just kind of waiting for that next hit of Twigs, and they did just enough to stabilize me with that little EP. Then came this monstrosity. I mean, these guys don't even remember the 90s. You Twigs, try to get past the shocking geekiness of this record, and I promise you're gonna get it eventually. You're not gonna get this if you don't have a strong love already for the Beatles or for any sort of melodic rock. You might also be a demon. These young lads are at such a beautiful crossroads of realizing their potential and yet having so much glory out in front of them if they just are able to stay humble. Last year, my top album was a classical, sophisticated ode to a literary hero, and this year it's a musical about a mass-murdering monkey. I hope you got at least a couple records from this. You know, whether it's for your Monday morning office playlist or a hi-fi stereo listening session, just either way, soak it in. Merry Christmas and happy 2019. Let's go out there and take some risks and serve the good people of the world well this year. God bless you, and as always, thank you so much for watching.